this is the last topic, and this is the topic Dennis wants to talk about. This is person-centered planning and support brokerage and the implementation plan. So I think this is where we're going to talk about conflict-free case management and talk a little bit about the difference between what we're calling independent facilitation versus conflict-free case management. So let me start with conflict-free case management. Conflict-free case management is a program that's coming down from CMS, which is the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, I think. And it's a requirement that everybody in the long-term services and support system, which is what developmental disability funding comes under, has a conflict-free case manager, and that's a case manager who's not affiliated with your service provider. That's it in a nutshell. It's much more complex than that, but that's it in a nutshell. And so it's being managed through the Executive Office of Health and Human Services, which is the oversight agency for developmental disabilities. And it has been determined that conflict-free case management would be outsourced to private agencies to provide. There was a timeline for this to be completed, I don't know how many years ago, but a long time ago. And so we linked what the consent decree identified as independent facilitation, which is something like conflict-free case management, where everybody had a facilitator who wasn't linked to your provider, who could ensure that whatever services you want would be provided without a provider saying, here's the services we have, choose from them, but would identify that you could say, here are the services I want, find them for me, regardless of who the provider was. So you wouldn't be limited to provider Joe Schmo saying, this is all we offer, that's all you can have, to you saying, but I want this, well, we don't have it, then find me where I can get it. And so that if you need 3 providers to provide your service, you could access that from 3 different providers and not being limited to the one provider you were associated with. So when we were reviewing that with the court monitor, we're like, oh, that's what conflict-free case management does. So we will link achieving that goal in the consent decree to the implementation of conflict-free case management. Talk to the people at conflict-free case management. Oh yeah, we'll have that up and running. Don't worry about it. We can meet the goals. It didn't happen. There was some setbacks in conflict-free case management. So we ended up, in order to accomplish that, had to hire we had to figure out an alternative just because we weren't going to get there. And the conflict-free case management team wasn't under the obligation to meet the consent decree goals. They were working with CMS. So we have 2 different federal agencies with effectively the same rules but different timelines, and we needed to achieve both. So what we determined to do is that we still needed to meet the goals of the consent decree. So we ultimately decided to hire our own conflict-free case managers within the state for certain populations. Effectively, the people who have never been employed, that was a main target of the consent decree. For people who self-directed, we hired independent facilitators, and those were mainly the people who were already working with that population, and just to provide the same training that people were getting with conflict-free case management. So ultimately, we were setting them up to be hired by the conflict-free case management entities when the time came. And then for some other people, as EOHHS was bringing on the conflict-free case management entities, moving as many people into that as we could with the ultimate goal that everybody's going in that direction. Does that make any sense?
Makes perfect sense. I understand it.
You do? Oh, excellent. The goal is to get there with a complete EOHHS oversight with conflict-free case management entities in place by 2027. Whether we'll do that or not, I don't know. But we have people on our staff, and we're maintaining, until it all gets taken over by EOHHS, the ability to accomplish the goals for the entire population as we move forward, so that everybody in 2026 will get some version of that to meet the goals of the consent decree, whatever it's called. And then however long it takes OHHS, we're not worried about it, as long as we're meeting your needs in one of those 3 forms. Mary Beth is identifying that there's a gap on the independent facilitators because they're contracted and there's no oversight.
Yeah, there's just nobody determined that they've met the qualifications in the annual trainings or whatnot that case managers are held to. So if you allow.
So I'm just going to acknowledge there is a gap right now, and we're working on closing the gap. They are not meeting the same requirements as the conflict-free case managers. That's correct, and they're not being funded the same way. You're correct.
But they could be if you leave them independent, but house them within the conflict-free case management agencies, because that way they're paid that way. They're just not held to that standard.
So let me just say that, because we're not going to fix it tonight.
Yeah.
The goal is to move them from where they are,
Yeah.
the independent facilitators who work with the self-directing populations, we're talking about, to move them from where they are to the conflict-free case management entities. That is the ultimate goal. We're just not there yet. So we're still in the gap phase. You're correct. We're just not there.
So would they be open to letting them stay contracted? Only because there are a lot of independent facilitators who only want to work with 5 people or 10 people, and you need as many people as you can get right now that are qualified.
I believe that's what we're discussing, but we're not there yet. But we're still in the gap phase. You're an expert at understanding the issues, but we definitely want to get there. We definitely want to have people who want to maintain the size of a caseload that they want to maintain. And we want people to be able to maintain the provider that they've been working with, if that's possible. We don't want to take people away. We don't want to break relationships. So people have had relationships with people who understand them, can write a better plan than anybody else with them. And so that's something that we want to hold on. And that's why we left that in place with the self-directing population. So that's ultimately our goal. So we're absolutely working on that. So Dennis is saying he has a plan writer that he likes, he would like to keep, but got a letter from conflict-free case management that he's being assigned another one. If you are getting a letter from conflict-free.
Well, it's not determined yet.
Yeah, but let me just say this, thank you.
Letters are from your department. The letters are from your department.
Yes, the letter's coming from BHDDH stating that you've been assigned a plan writer or a conflict-free case manager, but you have a plan writer that you want to continue working with. Call your caseworker, and we will work with you if we can work with you maintaining a plan writer that you have.
But here's the thing is that I don't want to say anything. Judy Smith is going to be, I don't know if she's retiring or not. I have no idea what's happened in her situation. But now it's like, well, now I'm in limbo. Because my plan is already in, and she'll be, and so see what I'm saying? It's kind of,
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
So if you don't know who you can call the supervisor, but call the department and we'll work with you. We don't want to take away a perfectly good functioning plan writer if you have a relationship and you want to maintain it.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, I'm glad you said that. So if there's a relationship that you have with your plan writer and you want to maintain your plan writer and you get a letter and your heart drops because you have to make a change you don't want to make, call. We'll work with you. What John just said is, we were talking about assigning case managers, but what John is saying is there a way for people to choose their own plan writer or evaluate the plan writer? It's one of the most important things for person-centered planning to be able to make that choice. And yes, we are absolutely working toward that. This is a startup way of getting this off the ground, but we do want, and I believe are required to offer you the choice of a plan writer. That is how it should work. So effectively, in the self-directing world, people know who their plan writers are, so we want you to be able to keep those. But for people who are coming from the agencies, they largely don't, they've never had a plan writer. Their agency has been their plan writer, and you can't have your agency as a plan writer. All right, thank you everybody, I appreciate it.